There is an object hidden in the sky. Our predecessors studied its appearances. Like a vast clockwork apparatus, it appeared on a fixed timeline and disappeared whole civilizations. They have left us records of this invisible eye in the sky and how they hid underground from its face. They feared the return of the Phoenix. John Nichols, professor of English and literature at the University of Glasgow, 1877. Sometimes, guys, we don't need to waste any time on an introduction. We just need to get right to it, because in this video here, I'm not going to tell you anything. I'm going to show it to you. I'm going to show you that the actual records that we have preserved from the ancient world tell the story of the Phoenix resets that I've been telling you from totally different mathematical perspectives. This is the book we're going in right now. I'm going to show you the book, and then I'm going to show you a most astonishing chart. Those of you who have followed my Phoenix material, this is a good one. You're going to like it. And at the end of this video, in the description box and the pinned comment is the link to Podia where you can get this manuscript. Some great points of interest here is that his chronology of the literature, of the ancient literature and history of the world, essentially begins after the three major cataclysms that are in Chronicon. One is the collapse of the vapor canopy, the Great Flood, 2239 BC. Then the Ogygian deluge, which destroyed the entire Bronze Age infrastructure, 1687 BC. Both of these events were Phoenix phenomenon dates. Then the 1447 BC Exodus cataclysm that we now know was all around the world. Here, if you notice, you'll see he has Joshua divides Canaan, 1445 BC. This is interesting. The Exodus was 1447 BC. Now, admittedly, this author from 1877 was not a chronologist, but this is very interesting. It also lines up with other historical traditions and dates that I've given you guys for Dardanus, and here is Danaus, who settled the Danaan in Argos, 1460. It's very, very close. I show you guys that actually the Danaan left Egypt the same time the Israelites did. It was a mass exodus from Egypt. But look at this vast gulf. 9 centuries from the Great Flood all the way to the first entry in this book from 1877. The oldest surviving records in the world in 1877 were the Vedas. Here they are. Now, this begins a very concise summary of data points I'm providing you guys. At the end of this video is what a data set looks like using all this material, and it's going to show you some profound things. But let's start here with the Vedas. This is circa 1380 BC. It's contemporary with the Eleusinian mysteries in ancient Greece, which we know came from Egypt. So the Vedas are his oldest, and by this time the Puranic commentaries have not been written. The Mahabharata has not been written. The Bhagavad Gita has not been written. This is the Rig Veda, the Atharva Veda. There's 4 Vedas. So this is the time period that he begins the historical record that we have surviving. Now we know by virtue of archaeology that prior to this, way up here, way past, he starts at 1500, but way up here, which he did not include in here because it was 1877, are the libraries of the libraries of Nineveh, the libraries of Rashamra and Ugarit. These cuneiform libraries had not even been excavated yet by this time. Excuse me. They had not been excavated. Hundreds of thousands of cuneiform Sumerian, Akkadian, Amorite texts had not yet been really widely used, widely spread. So he omitted to mention any of those. But this is the Vedas. This is ancient India. perhaps the Harappan civilization. We just really don't know. But it's a vast gulf of time between then and over a century and a half later, when we have the mythical hymnology, which is second on his list. Now, this is about 1280 BC. This is the writings of Linus. This is mentioned by Linus. It's an old text, mythical hymnology, which is before early minstrelsy of Orpheus. So this would have been 1260. There's 20 years between them. These are not the only texts that were in existence at the time. That's not what this list represents. This list represents the ancient records that we have surviving today. The things you can read today that came from the ancient world. There was many libraries that were existing at this time period. So this is I found it interesting over here on the left column. We have Asia and Africa. This was the reign of Latinus in Italy. I was really surprised to see that he mentioned this. This is about 1240 BC. For those who want to go deep into this time period in history, you need to read the Book of Jasher. Until today, we do not know who wrote the Book of Jasher, but they used chronological records that were available in Alexandria that were absolutely precise. I have studied the Book of Jasher in and out. It has the Phoenix phenomenon dates perfectly in multiples of 138. A genius put together the Book of Jasher, and it's highly recommended. And this is why academia and establishment historians condemn the Book of Jasher, for the same reason they condemn the Colburn Bible, for the same reasons they condemn the prophecies of Nostradamus, the same reasons they condemn Mother Shipton's material, the same reasons they condemn the Calivale of Northern Europe, and especially the Oralind manuscript of the Finns, the Dutch. So, I mean, there's reasons why academia condemns these, like Beowulf. They all have very precise, amazing information. So, we move down to 1180, and we find the dawn of religious epic. I can't pronounce that, but that's, you guys can see it, Musaeus, 1180 BC. But yeah, that's the dawn of religious epic. I really don't know, but this is where things get really interesting because they line up with the Phoenix cataclysms that I've shown you in many videos. And that is the fact that this period of time, as you can see here, he mentions all the 7 against Thebes, which I've told you guys about. Ancient Greek war, here Minos in Crete, 7 against Thebes. Here's Agamemnon of Troy, Menelaus, the Trojan War. Here's the return of the chiefs, Oresti and Argos, the Lydians on the sea, Aeolian migrations, Thessaly is settled. They came from the east. The Dorian migrations, which started this is during the Sea People's Confederation invasions. Here's what's interesting. Vast gulf of time between the dawn of religious epic, Musaeus, 1180 BC, and we move all the way down. And we move all the way down to Homer. Here's Homer, circa 962. Now, this is the farthest back I have ever seen Homer pushed. Homer is normally put around 900 to 930 BC. I have never seen Homer push back this far. I don't know. He may be right. I don't know. But here's the Odyssey and Iliad, 940 BC. Why is this vast gulf here? What have I told you guys in my prior presentations? The reason why all this is empty? I'm going to tell you why it's empty. Because in 1135 BC, the Phoenix phenomenon recorded in the entire Mediterranean, recorded in Pharaoh Segnocti's very final year, in Ramesses IV's first year, I believe he was Ramesses IV. It was major devastation. Sea People's Confederation happened right after the entire Mediterranean was literally wiped clean in a series of disasters and a cataclysm. And this was shortly after the Trojan War. It's what initiated the Dorian invasion. This empty period is the Great Mediterranean Dark Age that I've told you guys about. And it's represented right here in these data points. So I'm skipping over a lot of the biblical material. They're here if you guys want to. I'm only going to charge $5 for this entire book, and I'm going to go ahead and format it into PDFs, and I'm gonna edit it down, and I'm going to put it on Podia, so anybody who wants this text from 1877 will be able to get it. It'll probably be tonight before I'm done editing it. But this is it lines up the biblical chronology with all the events from secular history, and then the events that were occurring in secular history that have nothing to do with the actual text that we're looking at. This column is texts. This is secular historical events that line up with those texts. This is biblical chronology that lines up with the text and the secular events, and this is primarily just Africa and Egypt, this column here. So going over to Africa in Egypt, we see Tyre is settled. During the Great Mediterranean Dark Age, Tyre the Great is settled. This is Phoenicians moving in. The Phoenicians were a part of the Sea Peoples Confederation. These came from the Atlantic. During a cataclysm. These are the people of the true Atlantis, not the Atlantis of Graham Hancock and all these other people who pushed that stuff back to 10,000, 11,000 BC. The true Atlantis was 13th century BC. It was a cataclysm. Remember, the Atlantis story specifically says they were at war with the Greeks. The Greeks did not exist in a 10,000, 11,000 BC context. So here's Pharaoh Shishak of Egypt. We have Tartessus. For those of you who don't know, the Phoenicians, a Caucasian branch of the Sea Peoples Federation, they're the ones that founded Tartessus. Tartessus is ancient Spain. This is why Spain has very strong Phoenician roots. This is why alphabetical texts have been found there and all that. So, Jezebel of Sidon, that's the best biblical. Here's the foundation of Carthage. These are the Phoenicians again. Carthage was founded by Phoenicians from Tyre. And remember, Tyre's way up here. Tyre was founded by Phoenicians of the Sea Peoples Confederation when they moved in during the Great Mediterranean Dark Age. As the Dark Ages was ending, we have Homer. But Homer introduces the Iliad and the Odyssey. The Iliad and the Odyssey set the pace for all the following Greek writers. And this is a problem because we have very primitive frames of reference. Gods, demigods, goddesses, krakens, sea creatures. We have, after the Mediterranean Dark Age, we have everything told in very childlike stories. These Greek stories are very primitive, but the actual happenings, this Trojan War and these things were far more sophisticated. But we have them painted in this where this is basically where our histories began, the history of the West. It began not way up here when things were more technologically sophisticated, but way back here when the stories were being retold centuries later by people who were using primitive frames of reference. So, following Homer, we have Creophitus of Samos, and this again would be about 920 BC or so. It would be around here somewhere, 920 BC. He was contemporary in the Bible with like Zimri and Omri and King Ahab. But moving on further, we have another jump of about 60 to 80 years to circa 862. This would be Jonah of the Bible, and then the great Hesiod. We all know Hesiod's theogony. I have quoted Hesiod many times. Again, though, it's very childlike stories from primitive frames of reference. About 850 BC. So, moving down, these are the biblical prophets of Joel and Amos and Hosea. I don't know why they're in this column. They're supposed to be in this column. But I guess he ran out of room. Put them over here. We have Aegeus. I can't pronounce that. Trozine. Some of you guys know. Some of you Greeks listening to me, you know how to say this. This is the great year of 776 BC. For you other historians out there, you automatically know this was the beginning of the Greek Olympiads. Now, the 4-year calendar round of the Olympians goes back in distant antiquity to much older times, to when the Danaan departed right after the Phoenix Cataclysm of 1135 BC and settled on the coasts of ancient Ireland, known as the Tuatha Danaan. They took the games of Meath with them to ancient Ireland, but a branch of those people stayed in Greece, and that became the Danaan and Achaia of Greece, and they continued this 4-year tradition as well, and it became known as the Olympiads. This year, 776, is a year very prominent in Western calendars, just like 1776. This was the basic beginning of the Greek Olympiad calendar. Everything in Greek history from this point forward is measured before or after the first Olympiad, which is right here, 776. So, Stasinus of Cyprus, Arctinus of Miletus. Miletus was an Ionian city. It too was founded by the Caucasian Phoenicians, who were originally a part of the Sea Peoples Confederation that invaded the Mediterranean. They settled Philistia. They're also known and hated in the Bible, called the Philistines. I don't know how to pronounce that. That's Sinathon. Lacedaemon. For those of you who don't know, Lacedaemon, this is an old ancient name for the Spartans. You know the movie The 300, the Spartans. This is all about the same time, 765 BC. It's after the Greek Olympiad started. And then we have Eumelus. This is of Corinth. Corinth is a great ancient Greek city. We're looking at 760 BC. So we have an infrastructure being built here. Now, these are just the surviving authors and texts that we have today, or the fragments that are mentioned in other people's writings. This has nothing to do with all the libraries. We already know the Pergamum library was already collecting many of the books of the ancient world. So we have libraries at this time, but what we don't have are surviving texts. We don't have references in authors that we can cross-reference. And that's what this book is. That's what this book is identifying. I believe this is Greece. So I believe this is Greek history. Here's Asia Minor, Palestine. Okay, so he changed the columns. Now we're in the center. So there's the biblical prophets of Micah and Isaiah. This is here it is, 747 to 693. This is interesting because Isaiah the prophet was the prophet that interpreted when the shadow of the sun retrograded 10 degrees in the year 713 BC. And look, according to his chronology, that would have been right. Isaiah was the one who was in the court of Ahaz, and he interpreted the 10-degree retrograde movement of the shadow of the sun to be a judgment against the Assyria. And at that exact moment, according to the Bible, 185,000 Assyrian soldiers were vaporized by a blast from heaven. We know that as a flux tube. It's an electrical discharge that's in between two electromagnetic bodies. So this lines up perfectly. His chronology lines up perfectly. Isaiah was alive in 713 BC, according to this. That's very good to see. I like those correspondences. So we have historian Lessius of Lesbos right here, about 730 BC, and then 708 following him, we have Archilochus of Paros, probably another island. I'm not familiar. It might be Pharos, but it could be Paros. But Simonides, and he wrote the text Simonides was written by Amorgus. This is about 693. This is all before Solon, guys. Before Plato, before Aristarchus, before Aristotle. Aristotle. I never can say his name right, but Aristotle is great. I've read every single thing that's been passed down. But he's very different than Plato. Very different. It's almost as if Aristotle wasn't even the student of Plato. But there's Simonides. Here's Tyrtaeus of Sparta. Here's another Spartan, Lacedaemon, 685 BC. So we're getting a higher concentration of surviving text here. That's all I'm showing you. There's no reason to go into details about any of these because I don't know a lot of the details and they're not important for this series of data points, because I'm going to show you a data set at the end of this video that's going to make sense of all this material. So Calenus and Terpander of Lesbos. Let's see, crowned at the musical contest. This is 676 BC. This is 676 years before the alleged birth of Jesus. That's what these dates represent. So, Alaman of Sparta and Thalatus, Pyrrhic songs, 670 BC. We just have a higher frequency. The frequency of Greek authors is becoming more and more the more we go down the line. And here's a correspondence with Buddha, which is about 600 BC right here. This is Buddha, probably 650, 640 BC. I don't know. Let's look. Here's 640 here, so yeah, it's going to be in between them. For those of you who don't know, there have been 2 or 3 Buddhas, and two, maybe all 3 of them are actual people in the historical record. So this would be contemporary. Let's see what was happening up here in these events. Psammaticus of Egypt, I see him. Uh, there's Cyrene founded. Cyrene's in Africa, right there. There's a famous biblical passage talking about the Tower of Cyrene. Okay, so yeah, we have a lot. I mean, over here we have the rise of Megara and the sea fight at Corinth between Corcyra. Here's Byzantium founded. 650, this is how old and ancient this city is. Byzantium is founded 657 BC. That's amazing. You guys know of Byzantium today as the city of Istanbul. Istanbul. It used to be called Constantinople. But before it was named after Constantine, its ancient name was Byzantium, right here. Very rich history. 657 BC it basically means that this city is over 2,700 years old today, and it's still populated and thriving, and there has never been a period in history where this city wasn't occupied. It's always had people. That's interesting there. Let's see, colony. We got so much. There's so much. I got to move on. So here's the prophets in the Bible: Zephaniah, Jeremiah. Here's Thales of Miletus, 644 to 548 BC, right here, which is perfect because we know what he did in 583. In 585 BC, he predicted the darkening of the sun that would occur 2 years later, and it happened. And it wasn't the moon. Something else happened. We know what it was. It was the Phoenix phenomenon. That was Thales of Miletus, an astronomer and mathematician. So, the era of the seven kings begins. This is Rome. Now Greece is already well established. Greece is already getting old. It's well established. It's become very sophisticated, and now the era of the seven kings is taking. This is the seven sages of Greece. This is Thales. These are I can't remember. Solon's one of them. Periander. I don't know who these other guys are. I've never heard of Bias. I didn't know he was one of the seven sages, but I knew Thales was. You guys know I got like 4 different videos that all mention Thales and his history. But Solon, we all know who Solon is. Anybody who's read Plato knows who Solon is. And Periander is mentioned by at least 20 different Greek authors. But I don't know who these other guys are. But this is also the period of the seven kings of Rome. And for some reason, he has omitted that. 753 BC was the first year of Rome, and I don't see that mentioned anywhere in this deal. It is year 1 of the Roman calendar, but that's okay. He's sticking with the Greek right now. Sappho, another famous author, poet of Lesbos. Here's Sappho around the time of Habakkuk. They're dated exactly the same in the Bible. The Epimenides in Athens, another famous one. We're getting around the time of Solon now. I don't know how to say that. Alcaeus, Anaximander. Every reference to I got a book that cites every single fragment of Anaximander cited in all the known historical books. We don't have an actual text by Anaximander. We have all the citations from other Greek authors of things that he said. There's Anarchus in Athens. I don't want to bore you guys with all these details because I'm going somewhere with this. Here's the prophet Daniel and Obadiah in the Old Testament around 583, 578 BC. Zoroaster of the Zendavesta, the ancient Iranian holy books. Here's around the time that he lived. And Confucius, Aesop. Everybody's heard of Aesop's fables. They're fantastic. If you have not read them, you need to. This is about 560 years before Christ. Aesop's fables. Anacreon, I don't even know who this is. Pherexides, I don't know. Everybody knows who Anaximenes is. All scholars know Anaximenes. Let's see. Theognis. I really like Theognis. I've quoted him many times for you guys. I got a lot of his quotes. Let's see. The historian Xenophanes. I don't know how to pronounce that, Abacus or whatever. Everybody knows Pythagoras, the mathematician. This is about 531 BC. Let me get up here where you guys can see better. Haggai, Zechariah. Yeah, this is We have Heraclitus of Ephesus. This is an Ionian city, 500 years before Christ. So we have a higher concentration the more we go down the list. It gets to the point where we have a lot of overlap all throughout the historical record. I got to be careful with this. This is old. This is from 1877. Let's see. One more page to flip. Right here. I don't know who underlined these. Somebody who possessed this book way before me actually underlined some of these things. It's not cool, but they did it. But it is cool that they donated it to me. I just recently did a video where I cited Aeschylus, some of the things he said. Here, by this time, Argos is still a city, the ancient city that was destroyed in 1687 BC in a Phoenix cataclysm, by which we got the story Perseus and the Kraken. You know, Clash of the Titans. It's still around 500 BC when Argos is still populated. That's amazing. It's amazing. There's Simonides, Pindar. Pindar wrote the Odes. They're very good for those of you who like to read into ancient literature. Pindar's Odes can be found as a real cheap paperback Penguin book. At least that's the copy I have. Anaxagoras, another naturalist and science. Diogenes is prolific. His writings are prolific, and so is Zeno of Elea. Many people have cited him and Sophocles. We're getting into the Greek I can't even pronounce it, trageditions, but there's a lot of those. This is the time when the amphitheaters were this was all the rage, telling all these fictional and non-fiction stories in the form of acts. Acts that in between scenes in the great Greek amphitheaters. These were the movies of the ancient times. There's Democritus. Democritus had a theory that everything in the world was separated by atoms and that atoms made up the entire universe. That was Democritus' theory. There's Phidias. Everybody knows Herodotus. We have the entire book of Herodotus today. It is over 400 pages. I know I've read at least 2 different translations into English. Herodotus is fantastic. Herodotus said in his book, I record what people say, but I am by no means bound to believe it. I love Herodotus. Man spoke the truth. Euripides, and his book is packed full of historical material. You would get lost in Herodotus. It's awesome. But look at the higher concentration. The closer we get to the Anno Domini calendar, look at the higher concentration here of all these authors' works that we have today or are cited in or fragments of their works are cited in other works that we have today. Thucydides. We have the whole book of Thucydides, guys. Socrates, Lysias, Aristophanes. He wrote The Birds and the Clouds. Those are all his poems. Agathon, Hippocrates. Guys, Callimachus, Xenophon. You guys know a lot of these names. There's Euclid. Everybody who's ever studied arithmetic knows who Euclid is. Antisthenes, and of course the great Plato. 429 BC. Guys, the closer we get, Diogenes Laertius. This is This is Diogenes the Cynic. The great historian is named Diogenes Laertius. This is 419 BC. Oh yeah, it just goes on, guys. I got to move this again. This book is big. It doesn't look that big on my magnifier, guys. The book is big. All right, let's see. Phocion. There's Eudoxus. I told you guys about the scholar Eudoxus. Eudoxus right here, mathematician, 360 BC. Eudoxus is who Graham Hancock needs to read so he can get off that bullshit. Talking about Atlantis' 10,600 BC. You guys that got millions of people that are following you, you don't get no breaks from me. You're going to tell the truth or I'm going to call you out. Eudoxus of Cnidus is very specific about the calendars and the mathematical systems of the ancient world aren't like the ones today. Just because you see something was 1,100 units of time before something else, you can't jump to the conclusion that it's 1,100 years. Not when the civilization that was recording that only counted lunations. It's totally different. So, Tacitus, Aeneas. I've read all of Aeneas. He's a Latin writer. He's not Greek. He's a Latin writer. There he is, Aristotle the man. There he is. Cleomenes, Lycurgus. Let's see. Oh, I really wish he'd hurry up and get down the road. All right. Let's see. Theopompus, he's the one who wrote about the ancient Americas. He theorized that there were continents on the other side of the Atlantic. All right, Menander. Okay, man, it's just so many. I can't go into all the details on all these. I don't know all the details on some of them. So, but this book is absolutely packed with amazing stuff. But I need to show you the concentration, how knowledge is built, how all this is coming to pass, that we have so many records. All these people talking about all history's bullshit, and all these people talking about we don't have any ancient texts, or there are no old books. Yeah, I got a surprise for you at the end of this video. I'm going to show you why there's no old books surviving today, and everything we have is copies today. I'm going to show you exactly why. There are some people, guys, look, I know I'm a critic, and I know some people hate my guts, but there are some people who have no business trying to tell other people about history on YouTube. There are some people absolutely unqualified to be giving dissertations. Yeah, I get mad when I listen to some of these theories and all that. When I oh my God, I lost IQ points just listening to that drivel. All right, death of Demetrius. Oh yeah, Demetrius. There's a story about Demetrius I got to tell you guys, right? Demetrius is something else. There was an inventor that invented a device to kill people, and he brought it to Demetrius. Thought he was going to get some brownie points for this. I'm gonna leave that there. So he brings this device, and it's a bull, and it's a hollow bull made out of metal, and you put the victim inside the metal bull, and the metal bull is designed, it's standing on a podium, and inside the podium you put all your wood and your coal, and you light it on fire, and the belly of the bull gets red and heats up, and whoever's inside screams to death as they're literally boiling alive inside this bull. But it's a slow heat. It just gets hotter and hotter and hotter, so it takes a long time to die because the person inside acclimates to the heat slowly. So it's a very torturous, it's a very agonizing death to be slowly cooked in the bull. But the people having a party on the outside of the bull statue, they don't know that there's a human in there suffering like that, because the nostrils, the nasal pipes that were used for nostrils from the bull produced music, and it was like pipes and stuff. So as the human screamed on the inside, people didn't hear it that way. It sounded like the bull roaring, or the bull was happy. And people, yeah, it's sick. But anyway, the dude that brought that to King Demetrius, King Demetrius had his soldiers put that same dude in the bull, and then he just used the bull on the inventor. Yeah, guys, it's crazy. History's full of these anecdotes, guys. All these writers I'm showing you, oh my God, you would not believe all the incredible stories that are conveyed in a lot of these texts. Incredible stories. You would also be shocked to find that the majority of narratives that are put out in fiction in Hollywood today, they're just rehashes of the same old stories. These stories have already been told, guys. We just make movies out of them today. Antigonus, Athens joins. Oh, wait a minute. He moved the texts. Okay, the texts have been put on a different column now. I got to find the text. Okay, there they are. He moved the text to the second column. Back to the second column. So, guys, Euclid. We already showed you about Euclid, Timaeus. Here's Appian Way, Demetrius. Maybe that was King Demetrius. You know what? I think it was. I think it was King Demetrius, that story. But Eudaemonus, Zeno, Epicurus, you guys know many of these names. Theocritus. There's Aristarchus, my hero, who knew the Phoenix phenomenon. He knew the chronology, or he would have never been able to say what he said about the world being destroyed every 84 years. Phoenix number. Hieronymus. So we need to move a little bit faster through here. Archimedes, Eratosthenes of the great Alexandrian library, Livius. I love Livy. Livy is awesome, but I would really like to have access to the lost books of Livy. They've been found, and then they were instantly covered up, but more books of Livy have been found in the last I think 60, 70 years, and the Vatican covered them up. Plotinus is good stuff, guys. Plautus. Inuus, let's see. All right, we need to move on. Rise of the Pharisees. There's the Rosetta Stone. Okay, let's move on. Cato. We all know Cato. We're moving into the Latin authors now. Oh, there's Polybius. I have not read any Terentius. That's a Carthaginian deal. I've read all the fragments of Hipparchus that I could find. There may be more, but I wouldn't know where to find them. All right, Apollodorus. So we're moving on to a greater and higher concentration of texts as we move closer and closer to the Anno Domini calendar. And this video's already gone longer than I wanted it to. I'm sorry, guys, but you guys wanted to learn something, so here it is. Let's get into it. So here we go with, this is circa 150, 130, 170. We're getting closer and closer, 160, 148. We're getting closer and closer to 1 AD. The Gracchi, here's the Latin writers. Now, who is that? Antonius Crassus. Now, the Greek writers have fallen off. If you've noticed here, the Greek writers have fallen off. And the many Greeks that we have in this period, they're Latinized. Just like the Jewish authors that are mentioned further down here, like Josephus and Philo Judaicus, they're also Latinized. This basically means that the Roman Empire is in full effect. Here's Mithridates. Mithridates of Pontus, I have a video. Mithridates the Fourth, he's the one that almost beat the hell out of Rome until some type of divine intervention sent a rock to crash in between both armies and stop a battle right before Mithridates was going to beat Rome. It's not the first time it happened. Chinese record the same thing happening. Seems like divine intervention saves the aggressors when the aggressors are about to get taken out. There's Lucretius. He wrote a poem. It's over 7,350 lines. In that poem, he says that something unknown in the sky at a fixed time darkens the sun, and it's not the moon. It's also connected to earthquakes. He wrote about the Phoenix phenomenon, just like Pliny the Elder did, who's also on this list. Cicero on oratory is a book everybody should read. At least I enjoyed it. We're going to move. Vitruvius, we're moving down here. Virgil, these are all Latin authors. These are all Roman writers. Horace is a Roman writer. So we have here the takeover of the Roman Empire is fully taken over, and we get down here to these are major Roman authors here, right here. This is Livy. I've read both of them. This is Livy, and this is Ovid. So these works survive today. You guys can read these today. So this is the literature of the ancient world. He's moved the column to the left now. So, okay, we got Ovid banished. I don't know why he's got that there. Vius Particulus. I've told you guys about the very enigmatic statement of Vius Particulus. He doesn't mention miracles. He doesn't mention anything supernatural. There is a fragment from the Arco volume that shows that a man like Jesus was known to be teaching at that time. He wasn't working miracles, but Vius Particulus specifically stated that he feared that man because his genius, his intellect was very intimidating. And Vius Particulus said it was a controversy among the Jews as to the identity of this man, but the people loved him. Vius Particulus was a Roman centurion who was leaving military service after 16 years, passing through Judea when he came across this controversy. He introduced it into his historical book and left it alone, didn't write about it anymore. His history is absolutely gigantic. It's the history of Rome according to Vius Particulus. Here's Strabo, he's a Greek geographer, but he too was Latinized. I've read Strabo. I got him cited in my Chronicon quite a bit. So here we have these Latin authors. We're moving into the AD period of time. These are all the authors that were alive during the days of Jesus. Now the problem is none of them mentioned him, but I mean some people have reasons for that, and other people use that as evidence that the entire episode is fiction. Here's Philo Judaicus and Petronius, Apollonius. Here's Philo Senior, Seneca. This is 365. Let's see, Seneca, Lucan, Pliny the Elder. I've mentioned him so many times. Natural history. So we move here into the Latin area. We're in the AD period now, and we have the continuation of so much information. By this time, there are libraries that have 200,000 texts. All these libraries. These men have access to books. Many of these authors cite as many as 100 other authors. Guys, I am not exaggerating. Pliny the Elder, who I just showed you a minute ago, Pliny the Elder, here he is. There's Pliny the Minor. There's Pliny the Younger. Pliny the Elder, not Plutarch, where's he at? Pliny the Elder cited over 600 sources that were available to him. And they're all cited in natural history. I don't know. I lost track of where he is. He died in 79 AD when the volcano buried Pompeii and Herculaneum. Pliny the Elder was going to rescue a friend. A female friend sent a message with somebody else who was fleeing the area. There's Diogenes Laertius I was telling you about earlier. Fantastic writings. He did biographies on all the great Greek historians 500 and 600 years before him. He's fantastic. All right, so we need to move on because I'm going somewhere with this, and I do not want to bore you. This book only goes to the year 200. It only goes to the year 200. So, there's a reason for that, guys. Shortly after this was the Dark Ages. This is this text right here. Shortly after that was the Dark Ages. And shortly after the year 246 AD, a lot of changes happened. The Phoenix phenomenon occurred, I believe, in 378, 246. Yeah, 246. And we have a lot of Roman provinces that virtually vanished. Then the fall of Rome in 476. The Dark Ages. The reason he couldn't continue after AD 200 is because the amount of books literally plummeted to nothing. He would have been able to put all the way up to about the 11th or 12th century. He would have been able to put all the surviving books on one single page. So, having finished this part, we're going to move into the next part of this. You're going to see this chart, and I'm going to make you understand something. Everything that I just showed you that's in this book, this chart shows you in linear chronology so you can understand basically what John Nickel is conveying to us in this amazing text from 1877. Okay, the chart you're looking at right here is also in the PDF that I'm providing for this video. The PDF of this 1877 work that this data demonstrates. So we're going to start here with 5239 BC is the Nemesis Cataclysm. It begins the 3,000 years, I should have drawn that, of Theopompus. It's an ancient age. To 2239 BC, the Great Flood. This is the collapse of the vapor canopy after 1656 years. It is the pre-flood world. Now, you guys know that 4309 BC began the it was the first Phoenix Cataclysm. It's not on this chart, but this is a 930-year period that was ended. There were civilizations here. They were purely Adamu. These were the earthborn people. They were here. This is before the story of Adam and Eve begins. Now, 4309 BC, Phoenix Cataclysm occurs. Then, 4039 BC is the capture flood of Luna. Here's the first appearance of the moon. This separates the history of many peoples who recorded that they were here before the moon was. Shortly after the appearance of the moon, we have the pole shift in 3895 BC, which began the vapor canopy. This is the famous 1656 years mentioned in hundreds of historic texts. Now, this is the pre-flood antediluvian world. This is year 1 of the Annus Mundi calendar. It started with a phoenix, a Genesis pole shift, new heavens and new earth. So, this period of time is when the Anuna appeared in the vapor canopy, 3439 BC. Nemesis X object appears and causes the Gihon flood. This is in northern Egypt. It says in the book of Jasher and in ancient Jewish texts that 1/3 of the entire world's population died right here. Now, the Anuna appeared as civilization builders, and it started this whole Sumerian period here. But here's the interesting thing. Archaeologists, historians are always trying to push back these deals because Here in this period, we have the Sumerian, logographic, cuneiform, Akkadian, Babylonian, Assyrian, the hieroglyphic of Egypt, Rongo Rongo, all these ancient writings, inscriptions that we have found, they fit perfectly in this period right here, but they discuss events that were here. So historians and archaeologists sometimes label like the Karsag tablets to a date that's anachronistic. The Karsag tablets are not this old right here, but that's where they date them. Then tablets of Ur-Nammu, they know Ur-Nammu was back here sometime, but the actual cuneiform dates from like 17th, 16th, or 15th century BC. So this is very important to notice. History books get away with this all the time. All of the Sumerian logographic, the Chinese pictographic that's very close, the Egyptian hieroglyphic, which is before the demonic and the hieratic, the Rongo Rongo of Easter Island, which elements were also found in the Mediterranean and in Turkey. These all fit in post 2239 BC collapse of the vapor canopy. There are no actual tablets or writings that date to this period. However, these tablets that have been found discuss events that do happen in this period. In fact, I had to put that on the chart. No written records. All knowledge of the 3,000 year period from here, 5239 BC, all the way to the Great Flood. All knowledge of this period were transmitted through here. This period here is 552 years. It is the distance in time between two phoenix resets. The Great Flood that you know of in the year 2239 BC, and then civilization rebuilt itself, and we called it Sumer, Babel, Akkad, Assyria, Rashamra, Ugarit, Turkey, Anatolia, Urartu, Arya. All this was built here. All this civilization, these civilizations thrived here. The Amorites, Westerners, came in right here in this period. The Amorites came in and basically forged all these periods. These were the Amuru, the Westerners. Now, all this happened until this massive 1687 BC reset. I have many videos on the Ogygian flood reset. This again caused right here total collapse of literacy. Look how long this period is. There is no writings. The book that we just reviewed from 1877 starts right here. Here is the Vedas, Sanchuniathon, and then the very oldest of Greek texts. Then there is the Phoenix reset of 1135 BC, Pharaoh Signakti, great dragon over Egypt. All these events happen, and it's a huge Mediterranean Dark Age. Here it is, Mediterranean Dark Age right here. Again, the book from 1877 confirms this. Not a single text from the old world survived this period. It's a long period of time. And then 776 BC was the awakening of the Western world. It is the Olympiad calendar. And as soon as this happens, the world awakens. And look at the frequency of texts. Now, these are texts that we have today. These are texts that we have referenced in other texts. We know that they actually existed, or we have the actual text today. Later texts that refer to them, like the writings of Josephus, we have those texts. But when it comes to Anaximander, we have the writings of like Plotinus, of other historians who actually cite whole passages from these older records. Look at the frequency. Steadily increases, then it black bars out. That black bar is because there are so many texts from the ancient world preserved that we have access today, the translations, that there's no way to put individual lines. And I only took it to BC AD to show frequency. There's no reason to go any further, because when we get to 522 AD, we get this all over again. Once we get to 522 AD over here, which is about right here, when we get to 522, we have the Great Dark Age again. It is the one that created the Anno Domini calendar, AD calendar we have right here. It is the one the Roman Catholic Church hid from us. It was caused also by the Phoenix. And I have a video, very persuasive, very, very compelling historical texts that are all cited showing that. They masked it and covered it up as the great Justinian darkness and plague, but it all happened in 522. Now, Yeah, all these resets are massive, but they happen periodically, and I have other charts that show their mathematic perfection. This chart isn't designed to do that. This chart is to show you what we have preserved from the ancient world and where it fits and how it all beautifully ties into the Phoenix history. I hope you enjoyed this presentation, guys. If you want it, $5, $5 is nothing. I'm providing it on Podia for $5 for my work putting this together, editing it down, and I'm going to make sure that you guys have access to this amazing corpus of knowledge from 1877. It has a lot more than what I actually produced in this video. There is an object hidden in the sky. It has been here many times. In ancient times, it was known as the Phoenix. It is approaching perihelion. It is located at 23.5 degrees north of the ecliptic and is presently in descending node. On May 15th, 2040, it will return. On May 16th, our world will be a very different place. Hey guys, it's your friendly neighborhood iconoclast again. This is Jason of Archaics.com. Really busy. I'm so busy and going in so many different directions. I just had to slow down today and do this video. This morning when I woke up, this video wasn't on my mind, but I've been going through a colleague of mine's book and it triggered me. The Song of the Sphinx. This is not an advertisement for the book, although it is good. It's Larry Paul. He is the director of the American Institute of Pyramid Research. His book is very thorough. He's got a personal note to me right here. It's a really good book. I was surprised. He and I, we have our differences, and that's only because our education is very, very different. We have approached the same object, the Great Pyramid of Giza, from totally different vantage points, and there's a lot of crossover and commonality between Larry Paul and I. But I am impressed with some of the material. It's a really good book. He, as a matter of fact, he just released a paper on the speed of light found recorded in the Great Pyramid's dimensions. Now, you guys know from my prior presentations, those of you who are Archaics veterans, you know that it is not an anomaly to me. It is not mysterious to me that all the physics constants are found within the rectilinear and exterior and interior dimensions of the Great Pyramid. This is, I have said this many times, and in my own pyramid research, I have brought something completely alien and new to the table. I don't care about the constants. They're there for a reason. It's because what the Great Pyramid is, this amazing piece of architecture that encodes all the calendars of the ancient and modern world, all the timekeeping systems. Yes, guys, we have an amazing structure in Egypt that until now there's almost no accurate information coming out about it. People identify the particulars and make a big deal about this and that about the Great Pyramid, but the overall design is ignored as to what its purpose is. It is obviously multifaceted. There have been people who have theorized, but they didn't take their theories any further, such as Graham Hancock. I applaud the fact that he and another author, I think it was Robert Bauval, have theorized that the Great Pyramid is a holographic template of our cosmos, of our universe, of our world, of our experience. And I'm cool with that, because you guys have seen in my own presentations where I demonstrate it. Now, there is a vast departure between theorizing something, putting out a bunch of documentaries and putting out published books and putting out YouTube videos or videos and other presentations on other platforms. There's a huge difference between theorizing something and demonstration, because demonstration also involves applications, and this is why I've put out so much material on the Great Pyramid that you can verify with your own cell phone. You can either Google the data and see the resources yourself, or you can use the calculator app and you can follow me, because if something is true, it can always be seen from multiple different mathematical vantage points. This is a fundamental tenet of the Archaics research, and it will not change. Concerning the Great Pyramid, I'm going to show you right here in this video a basic summary of the massive amount of data that awaits for you in the Archaics presentations. And from Archaics veterans, I promise you, you're going to want to watch this video. It is a summary that you're going to want to share with a lot of people. And for you podcasters out there, or those of you who think you know what the Great Pyramid's function is, what it's for, its purpose, who built it, how it was built, and ultimately what role it will play in the future, maybe you might want me on your podcast, you might want me on your show, and believe me, I'm more than willing to share what I know. It's freely available all across my channel. So the Lost Secrets of Giza playlist, that's what it is. But I discussed the Great Pyramid in many aspects of my channel as well. So, no, excuse me, Archaics.tv is almost ready to launch. We got the videos uploaded, still got a few more to do. I'm also scheduling, so be patient with me, guys. I know many of you have sent me emails from other YouTube channels and basically other platforms. I am itemizing, trying to get a ledger together of all the podcasts, because I'm telling you, as soon as I launch Archaics.tv real soon, I'm also going to be doing, in tandem, I will be basically launching a whole podcast campaign. Right now, I have 30-something people I'll be doing podcasts with. I've reached back and contacted almost all the people that I've done podcasts with. I still have more of them to contact. And for those of you who have interviewed me before and you want to do so again, I'm all for it. Just contact me with one of my emails. Matt will put you on the podcast list and we'll get to you. But Archaics.tv has slowed us down, but I promise you, when we finally unleash, you guys might have to take a break, because we'll be going hard with Archaics.tv and the YouTube channel at the same time. So, in this presentation, we know that we're dealing with a technolithic artifact of precision engineering that is so sophisticated that the more we learn about the Great Pyramid of Egypt, the more we realize by studying by studying these amazing tolerances in very, very little curves, but the rectilinear distances remaining so true over vast distances throughout the pyramid, in doing so through multiple layers, and each layer being different than the one below. Yeah, guys, 203 levels of blocks, but no levels of blocks are uniform. They're all at different. This might have been some way of earthquake proofing the structure. But we're dealing with a technolithic artifact that is so sophisticated that it itself, listen to me, it itself reveals to us the absolute technologically advanced sophistication that must have existed when it was built. Yeah, guys. The Egyptologists want you to believe in something that is ridiculous, that pyramids had an evolution to them, that they want you to believe the uniformitarian standard, that somehow rock cairns became hills, and that hills became pyramids, and that in this way they developed the pyramid. It's not what we have in the archaeological record. We have the first 5 dynasties of Egypt putting out the most sophisticated pyramids, and pyramids became crappier and crappier from the 6th dynasty afterwards. It was a devolution. It was a declination of technology, and it is widely noticeable through all the civilizations of the ancient world, not just Egypt. So, if recorded history, the historical record, began as an advanced civilization, then we have been in declination ever since, up until very, very recently. And it's only very, very recently that we've been able to decipher and put all these mysteries back together. Look at this illustration right here. This right here shows, this is something I drew, but it shows right here the Great Pyramid is specifically designed. It is designed, despite all the physics constants, which are nothing but the protocols of the construction of our reality. But within those protocols, there are calendars going forward and backward in time, like palindromes. And this is what the Great Pyramid shows. This precision is absolutely amazing. In this second illustration here, this was done by somebody else. Almost 100, well, over 100 years ago, David Davidson drew this right here, and it's amazing. But it shows the precision of the angles of the Great Pyramid. It shows these 26-degree angle passages that produce the 52-degree angle at the axis. But the exterior, this is the interior, but the exterior of the monument shows a 52-degree angle as well. Now, these things, Queen's Chamber, King's Chamber, these are not what they were called when this place was built. There was something else. These weren't air shafts. These weren't a grand gallery and the subterranean chamber, well pit chamber. These things are names that we've attributed to since it's been discovered. 820 A.D., the Caliph of Baghdad, Al-Mamun, he excavated into the pyramid and found this upper area. Only the lower area had ever been known in recorded history. The upper grand gallery, the King's Chamber, Queen's Chamber, relieving chambers, all this was discovered by Muslims in 820 A.D. So, and it's all because of the fall of a ceiling block that it cleverly concealed an upper passage. So in this third, you just see right here in this third illustration just how sophisticated this was. It's absolutely perfect. From underground all the way to the top of the pyramid, all its lineaments were absolutely precise. It took a science, a very sophisticated science, that had already worked out all the mysteries of mathematics. All this was already done thousands of years ago when they built this structure and understood it. Here's another picture right here. It's almost like an X-ray of the Great Pyramid. Now what you're looking at here, in these shots right here, we're looking at the measurements of the Great Pyramid's interior and exterior dimensions, its rectilinear lengths from feature to feature, done to the thousandths of an inch. That's what these measurements are right here. You are looking on at the screen. These were done by Sir Flinders Petrie. They are to the thousandths of an inch. They are the only measurements that I use, and I use them because these are the only measurements that the scientific establishment accepts. These are the only measurements that Egyptologists accept. And yet, these are the only measurements that produce the many mysteries that I have found in the Great Pyramid, that I have revealed in published books, in my presentations, and I'm going to tell you about right here in this video. These are measurements done to the thousandth of an inch. This is just all this is tabulated. But if you look here it is in 2 dimensions. Right here. Here's the Great Pyramids. All the horizontal and these are all horizontal distances right here. Sloping and horizontal distances are on this first chart. These are all done to the thousandths of an inch. Again, right here, these are the vertical distances. Everything measured, every feature measured up and down. Listen, guys. This is the subterranean chamber. It was done too, vertical and horizontal right here. But it's beyond belief what we find. The Archaics research is what has brought this to the world's attention. No other researcher before me has ever published this data. And so far, I don't have any takers who want to come in and try to write a thesis to disprove what I'm showing in this video. Because I more than welcome it. I will publish it on my channel, and then I will give answer. But what I'm showing right now are these measurements to the thousandths of an inch. Each one of them found in the Great Pyramid's rectilinear, sloping, interior, and exterior measurements to the thousandths of an inch that just so happen to all be divisible by the number 138. Excuse me, this chart here, there is a bunch of them. Here's another chart right here, 1656 is divisible by 138. My Archaics veterans, you already know 1656 was the year of the Great Flood in many ancient texts, including the Book of Genesis. Book of Jasher, 1656 is 138 times 12. Right here's the King's Chamber. Right here is a aerial view of the King's Chamber and the antechamber, and basically the entrance from the Grand Gallery. 138 is encoded everywhere in these charts. You really need to see the presentations themselves, where I blow these charts up much larger for you to see. But here is the subterranean chamber, and again, these measurements are all divisible by 138. This is beyond coincidence, and it's never been published in any book prior to mine, ever. You need to pay attention, because 138 is not an arbitrary number at all. Here it is again. You can see 1656 right here is the vertical distance from the great slab, which serves as the floor to the king's chamber, all the way to the foundation of the pyramid. Foundation being year 1. My archaics veterans, you already know, 3895 BC was year 1. 1656 years later was 2239 BC. It was the collapse of the vapor canopy. You know of it as the Great Flood. Here it is again. More measurements, all divisible by 138. Here they are. All these charts. I'm not going to go through them. That's what my playlists are for in my published books. But here you are. Here you can see right here. Chart after chart after chart. All these measurements in the Great Pyramid are divisible by 138. But then it goes even further. We all know about the tetractys. I have shown the tetractys. It is how you form 10 dots into a pyramid. It takes 10 dots, 4 at the bottom, then 3, then 2, then 1. The arrangement of these dots in ancient times was called the tetractys. It represents the number 10, or something to the power of 10. We have 4 slopes on the Great Pyramid that are all 51 degrees. 51 times 4 is 204. This is really interesting. 204 times the tetractys, which represents the pyramid, is 2040. But even more mysterious is that the Great Pyramid is 203 levels high, but it's missing one component. It's missing the capstone. If the capstone was set in place, it would be huge, but it would be the 204th component of the Great Pyramid, finalizing it. So we have here, this isn't something that is conjectural. The 138-year periodicity is encoded all throughout the Great Pyramid. It is the chief message of the interior arrangements of the Great Pyramid. But even more so, look at this chart. At the top, you can see 2 different vertical distances in the Great Pyramid. No, 2 different distances in the Great Pyramid add up to 2040. Next chart. 2 different distances in the Great Pyramid's architectural rectilinear features equals 2040. Look at the third chart. Look at this third chart. 3 rectilinear distances all in the same line from the entrance to the pyramid to the passage conjunct all the way up the grand gallery across the entire 534-inch floor of the king's chamber. It ends in 2040. Again, another chart. This is beyond coincidence. If you want to see exactly how these were done to the thousandths of an inch, you need to watch those videos. But right here, this is a summary, and it shows, here's a 5th chart. Again, we find that rectilinear distances coming from different areas of the pyramid or going to different destinations still equals 2040. Again, we arrive here at this next chart from many ancient, these are all 957 BC, Solomon's Temple, 930 AD, 617 BC. These are not arbitrary. Every one of these dates are in my Chronicon, and I show you exactly what in world history as relating to the unfolding of human events and the Great Pyramid, what happened in those years. But in the rectilinear dimensions right here, it ends in 2040. Next chart. This is all white. This is not a black chart here. This is a white chart. Look at this. Again, we have the dimensions of the Great Pyramid, starting with a very significant calendrical event in world history, counting those passage lengths to the thousandths of an inch, we arrive at 2040. Again, next chart. Again, more historical events, all recorded in Chronicon with source materials. What ancient texts we take them from, you can verify everything with your own calculator. Again, we arrive at a terminus of 2040. Next chart. Again, we arrive at a terminus of 2040. Over and over again. Do not think at all that this is all I have to present. My archaics veterans already know I'm barely scratching the surface. I have hundreds of charts that show these demonstrations. This chart here shows the 203 levels of the Great Pyramid from the foundation, year one. 203 levels all the way to the top, to where a 204th component is expected to sit. It's the missing capstone. So, this is 203 levels. We know the return of the chief cornerstone is in the year 6000. 6,000 from the new heavens and the new earth, which was a devastating pole shift. The Adam and Eve story of 3895 BC. This would make 2105 AD. Coming up in the near future, 2105 AD would be the 203rd year, indicated in the steps of this pyramid calendar right here. In the 204th year would be the year 6000 Annus Mundi, since that terrible cataclysm. So, if you think this is conjecture, I have multitudes of videos about 1902 and many references showing why the last days countdown to the Great Pyramid began in 1902. But let's look at it from a rectilinear perspective in the internal arrangements of the Great Pyramid. Look at this chart right here. This chart shows all these distances in the pyramid, and when you put them together, every single one of them Phoenix related, it adds up to 5796. 5,796 years from 3895 BC, the Adam and Eve pole shift cataclysm. Year one of the pre-flood world, 1656 years. Yeah, that was 1902 AD. Don't believe me? Pull out your calculator. Watch the videos, follow along, and you'll see it for yourself. And you'll also learn some other things, like what Nostradamus said about 1902, and what 1902 represented to different nations around the world. So we have this complexity here in the Great Pyramid, but don't take my word for it. Look at this flash right here. Do you see all these pictures? No, you can't, because there's too many of them to show in this video, and that's why they're spinning by so fast. But my presentations go into great depth explaining everything that's in these images that are flashing before your eyes right now. You can go to my Lost Secrets of Giza playlist and learn all about the Great Pyramid, and I promise you, you will learn things that you will never read in other books, that you will never see in other presentations. The Great Pyramid is truly an anomaly. But the real mystery here is, why have so many people ignored everything these old books tell us about the Great Pyramid? Because when you read people's books about the pyramid today, you're basically reading rehashed material of things that people already published in the 1950s, 40s, 30s, 20s, 10s, all the way back to the 1870s. Charles Piazzi Smith and John Taylor, Robert Menzies. It's just rehashed material. Almost nothing new is being produced, except in the archaic material. And it's time for us to grow up and get out of this childish BS adult fantasy mindset and start entertaining these anomalies and understanding applications and figuring out what they mean to us. Because as long as we entertain all this bullshit about the Great Pyramid and all this stuff about Egyptian history and try to attach these pharaohs and dynasties to the pyramids of Giza, we will always be directed in the wrong way. I'm of the habit of saying that too many coincidences exhibits no coincidence at all. These synchronicities aren't the actual mystery. The mystery is that we have taken so long to come to these understandings. Look at this chart. The 138-inch spacing and denominations of the rectilinear measurements to the thousandths of an inch in the Great Pyramid, it has a meaning. That meaning has been found in the Phoenix phenomenon, an event that occurs every 138 years in our holography. It causes edits. It causes changes in living conditions, changes in demographics. Sometimes it's astronomical phenomena. Great disasters are covered up. Mass populations vanish. Some people go crazy. Others sink into the ground. The Phoenix phenomenon is a multiplicity of events affecting different geographical areas. And sometimes those areas are absolutely insulated from what's going on around in adjacent areas, as if the phenomenon itself is able to edit a locale and yet leave a nearby area completely untouched. This world that we are in, I'm often saying our world is not what you think. I mean that. We are living in a very technologically advanced, call it a simulacrum. For those of you who want to get real proper in your grammar, a simulacrum, if you're an archaics veteran, whatever it is, it's a construct. And this is what we live in. And for some reason it has a heartbeat. And that heartbeat is every 138 years. And it's very, very, very little different from the fine structure constant. That tiny little space in the 137 point something indefinite that becomes 138. That little spacing that turns a linear projection into a series of 138 multiples. So we have this in the Great Pyramid. Among all the physics constants of pi, phi, curvature, speed of light, diameter of everything we know in the sun, all the different ratios, all this stuff. There are whole books published about all the constants that have been found over and over in multiple dimensions of arithmetic in the Great Pyramid. But no one has yet come forward and given an explanation why these things are done in denominations of 138. And yet when we look at the history of the world, look at these charts. I have an entirely different playlist. Not my Giza playlist. My Phoenix Archive playlist. 81, 82 videos that explain the Phoenix phenomenon and how well documented it is. 3 published books. 81 videos. Probably close to 60 or 70 podcasts also. That's not included in the playlist where I talk about it. Look at these charts. This is the history of the year, history of the world in 138 year periods. If it's dated on this chart, we have data for it. We know what happened in those years. And it's not pretty. The patterns for the disappearance and reappearance of the vapor canopy, it's all here. All these charts. The Great Pyramid of Giza, its rectilinear dimensions, the denominations of 138, it's all right here. When you do it as a 2-dimensional linear projection, what we have in the Great Pyramid is right here in this chart. And right here in this chart, all these dates you see, these are all in my Chronicon. Over and over and over, I have challenged people to look these dates up and see what you see. They're all mentioned in the old books, the ancient records. No modern history books talk about these things. These charts are meticulous because the data points are in the thousands, the data sets, scores of data sets to put all this together. This is the archaics data showing the Great Pyramid is a holographic calendar showing the past and the future. Here's another calendar here. It's all encoded in the Great Pyramid, but here's the Nemesis X timeline. This is all the historical times the Nemesis X appeared. It always comes close to our world for 60 years, and for 732 years it's far away. But here's the exact patterning. 2106, the year 6000 that I just told you about, the return of the chief cornerstone, it's also the Nemesis X year. It's the 60th year. It's right there, 2106. All this in the Great Pyramid. Look at this, the 13 Bactans of the Mayan long count. My archaics veterans already know it's 1,872,000 days divided by 13 Bactans of 144,000 days. When does it end? When the Nemesis X object appears in 2040, right here. Just like we saw on the other chart. You can go through the specifics of this chart and see all this in my book, Anunnaki Homeworld. The Mayan long count was never going to end in 2012. In 2011, I had a book published that explained the Mayan arithmetic. It's the same as the Vedic and the Sanskrit and the Sumerian. It's the same as the Olmec. It is the same as the ancient Egyptian, Assyrian, Babylonian. It's the same all the entire ancient world used a sexagesimal calendar. And you cannot apply a modern 365.25 day to an ancient system that only knew of a 360-day year. It doesn't work. That's why the Acadummies came up with 2012. I corrected it and show you it's 2046. Here's the great Anunnaki chronology. It's called the Anunna-Nur system. Nur is not a word I made up. It means the 600. And this was the great year in ancient texts. Many old texts talk about an old timekeeping system that was based off 600-year periods. Yeah, it wasn't just Flavius Josephus, guys. There's many ancient historians that talk about it. And it's all here in the Archaics research. Shows right here. It's really amazing stuff. Every bit of it in the Great Pyramid. All these charts right here. Guys, what we're dealing with is an architectural structure in Egypt that is older than the very civilizations that surround it. We're dealing with an architectural structure that required a science and engineering far superior to anything that we have today. We're dealing with an architectural structure that has encoded within it three-dimensionally and multiple dimensions of arithmetic every single physics constant. It is basically a programming template for our world. But encoded within it is a 138-year protocol that makes sense of the entire history of the world. The heartbeat of the phoenix, this thing that changes our world every 138 years, is in May 2040. This is the subject matter of the Archaics data, and it's still open to challenge. I'm not running from anyone. The data is here. You have 3 published books to go through, 81 Phoenix videos, and over 70 Great Pyramid videos. But all the data is here, and it's free, and there's no reason you shouldn't know these things. There is an object hidden in the sky. Our predecessors studied its appearances. Like a vast clockwork apparatus, it appeared on a fixed timeline and disappeared whole civilizations. They have left us records of this invisible eye in the sky and how they hid underground from its face. They feared the return of the Phoenix. So I'm going through my library, and I give John the multi-series volumes of Harper's Encyclopedia of the United States History, which strangely reads from 458 AD to 1902. Here is the title page for Volume 8. At the top you clearly see from 458 AD to 1902. And at the bottom, you see this series of encyclopedias was published in 1902. As those paying close attention to my channel already know, I have isolated unusual activity and facts about the year 1902. This video is for those who have followed this material. In this 121-year-old book is an illustration of how the earlier New York Stock Exchange appeared. The interior of the building is magnificent. This is the stock exchange even earlier in 1881. And another illustration. But looking back at this original illustration, we find that the New York Stock Exchange, this grand, beautiful building that we see right here, it says right here at the bottom, torn down in 1901. So naturally, I searched for a reason for why it was torn down. I find that the New York Stock Exchange has been located at the same site in New York since 1865, all the way
all the way to now, 2023, except a total, which is a total of 158 years. However, one small period is omitted. This should come as no surprise, but the official stock exchange history on the internet reads, since 1865, with the exception of 2 years between 1901 and 1903, the exchange has occupied all or part of the site of its present location. Okay, so we have a target date of 1902 here without even mentioning 1902, that the New York Stock Exchange was not present at this location. So I search further and I come across something new, something that I nor Gary Warmerdam or others have been able to find. I don't know why, it's been there all along, but it's the Panic of 1901. Yes, this is in the newspapers. On May 8th and then followed by May 9th, the New York Stock Exchange crashed and then closed for 4 days. The month of May is interesting as this is the Phoenix month, and the exchange itself was started on May 17th in the year 1792. As many of you know from my presentations, the Phoenix phenomenon occurs about May 16th or May 17th every 138 years, in the month of May every time. The New York Stock Exchange building, as we see, it was torn down in 1901, and the architect George Post designed the new one to replace it, which was built in 1902 and then opened in 1903. Post also designed the New York Public Library in 1901, opened to the public in 1902. Look at all those books. So, in the same book from 1902 that we found the illustration explaining that the stock exchange had been torn down to be rebuilt, we find an illustration of the original Great Seal of the United States. As you can clearly see here, this is a phoenix on the seal. As I've shown in my published books and prior presentations, the Founding Fathers explained that the seal was of the phoenix, but in the year 1902, the Great Seal was quietly changed to that of the bald eagle. Another item of note in New York at this time is the building of the first skyscraper in New York, known as the Flatiron Building, by the Fuller Company. From these original pictures, you can see that the triangular structure was the tallest building in New York when it was erected in the year 1902. The beginning of the New York Stock Exchange at its present location was in 1865, which was a dark year in American history. President Abraham Lincoln was an enemy of the world banking dynasty of Europe, and he promised to free Americans from foreign intervention in American currency, and he was assassinated. President William McKinley was opposed to the world banks, and he succeeded in getting the gold standard passed in the year 1900. But in 1901, he was assassinated. The New York Stock Exchange opened and closed in both 1865 and 1901, both years of these presidential assassinations, and the construction lasted through 1902, and in 1903 the new financial structure began over America and the world by extension, in a totally new exchange building. A financial takeover of America had happened right under the noses of the public. The bird of hope, the phoenix, was changed to a bird of prey, the eagle. The calendrics of these events actually show us the collapse of this power structure at a future date. Remember, if something is true, it can be seen from multiple different mathematical vantage points. So let's examine 3 separate series of events. The start of the New York Stock Exchange in 1865 and presidential assassination was 36 years until 1901, presidential assassination and the tearing down of the stock exchange. But when we add another 36 years, we find that in 1937, stock prices fell rapidly in a sharp recession, falling by 58%. When we add yet another 36 years, we arrive to 1973 when the stock market crashed and remained low all the way into the following year. Adding another 36 years, we get to 2009, the housing market bubble crash. And adding a final 36 years beyond that, we arrive to the year 2045. There is no reason to calculate any further. All archaics veterans understand this period just prior to the year 2046. But this could be just coincidence, so let's look a little deeper. The 2 worst stock market crashes in history are documented to be 58 years apart. In 1929, the crash began the Great Depression, and 58 years later, the 1987 crash was when international markets plummeted. The whole world crashed. Simply adding 58 more years after 1987 brings us to the year 2045. But these 2 examples pale in comparison to this final one. It's this 3rd example that demonstrates the finality of this oppressive financial system's end. In 1907, the Knickerbocker Panic happened in New York, but it affected international markets. A major banking crisis that was totally caused by fear-mongering and people drawing out their money from the institutions. But the affair had been contrived. It was planned and executed to make it easier for the issuing in of the illegal Federal Reserve and the IRS and its many international counterparts. Simply adding the number of the Phoenix, 138 years from 1907, brings us the end of this corrupt system in the year 2045.
Welcome to the first Book Monkey presentation. Old books contain myriads of secrets, and in archaics we have already delved into many of them, but we are going to explore many more. At the end of this video, I'm going to tell you about an incredible thief and the huge cache of ancient text he was recently caught with. So let's delve into the ancient world's libraries and why so much has been lost. The chain of custody on the knowledge that we possess today goes all the way back to ancient Sumer, the libraries of Nippur, Uruk. These had many texts that later appeared in the libraries of Babylon, the Temple of Nabu, Old Assyria, Ebla in Syria, Ugarit, Knossos of Minoan fame, and the Amorite libraries of Mari in Syria, 1700 BC. Of course, the Temple of Karnak in Thebes, the coffin and wall text, the pyramid text, and all the papyri. Ashurbanipal Library of Nineveh, which is now located in modern-day Iraq. This was the 7th century BC. We have found tens of thousands of the texts that were in that library. The books of the ancient Sibyls are removed from the oracles and distributed till they are lost to history at this exact same time. Then the Temple of Artemis at Ephesus. It houses all these texts. This is one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Of course, the Temple of Apollo at Delphi had a library, and the Temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus in Rome. But in 331 BC, Alexander the Great burned the original copies of the Avestan holy books of Iran, written in the Old Persian tongue. 21 volumes that contained hundreds of thousands of verses. And just after this, a Chinese emperor in 221 BC had his soldiers burn every known book in China, and all the scholars who were capable of writing were also burned alive. The Library of Pergamum was built in the 2nd century BCE, had 200,000 texts. It is located in modern-day Turkey. It was later looted by Antony, the lover of Cleopatra. In 83 BC, the Great Fire of Rome saw the burning of the library where the books of the Sibyl had been kept by the Senate. And in 48 BC, the Library of Alexandria, Egypt, 500,000 texts are destroyed during the Roman conquest of Egypt. Then Caesar destroyed the libraries of the Druids kept in the sacred hill of Alesia. In 273 AD, the Romans destroyed the Bruchium Library at Alexandria, and Diocletian had burned 200,000 scrolls before that. Then in 476, the Library of Alexandria is again destroyed, this time by the Roman Emperor Theodosius I. This is all done long before Islam entered the picture. In 645, the Library of Alexandria is destroyed once more, this time by the Arab invasion of Egypt. And about 730, the year 730, Leo of Byzantium ordered the destruction of 300,000 classical manuscripts. And for 500 years, the Dark Ages, the preservation of historical texts, maps, and the classics was done in Syrian and Arabic, as literacy throughout Europe was almost non-existent. In 1204, during the Fourth Crusade, the Library of Constantinople is destroyed, and a century later, the papacy conspired to destroy and steal the books and maps of the Knights Templar. About this time, the great universities across Europe are founded. In 1499, the library of the monastery of San Lorenzo in Florence, Italy is destroyed by a fire. And in 1527, the library of the Abbey of Cluny in France is destroyed during the French Wars of Religion. In 1561, the library of the University of Salamanca in Spain is destroyed by fire. And in 1689, the library of Lavore in Paris is destroyed. In the year 1731, the Library of Escorial in Spain is destroyed by fire, and in 1755, the Royal Library of Lisbon, Portugal is destroyed during an earthquake and a subsequent tsunami, a quake that is felt across the whole of Europe. The ancient maps and books that survived these destructions often ended up in the hands of Freemasons, Rosicrucians, and Illuminati. In 1865, during the war between the states, the library of the University of Alabama is destroyed by a fire. In 1904, the Imperial Library of Peking, China, is destroyed by fire. And in 1918, during World War I, the library of the University of Louvain in Belgium is destroyed by German soldiers. And in 1933, the library of the Academy of Athens in Greece is destroyed by fire. In 1992, during the Bosnian War, the National and University Library of Bosnia and Herzegovina is destroyed by fire. You guys know my Central East Texas accent. I'm about fixing to pronounce some of these words. This is by far not a conclusive list. There are several reasons why so few copies of books from the ancient and old world still exist today, such as climate conditions, natural disasters, accidental destruction from war, demolition, repurposing old books by erasing the contents to write over them with new knowledge. Some are eaten by worms and termites, censorship, purges, book burnings. But the following federal court proceeding reveals that a lot of the missing and lost books of history may have had a calculated, targeted fate. In the federal criminal case, the United States versus Spiegelman, 4 Federal Supplement, 2nd edition, page 275, Southern District of New York, 1998. The opinion was written by Honorable District Judge Kaplan, who wrote, "Great research libraries are repositories of our social, cultural, and scientific heritage. Their rare books and manuscripts are vital to understanding the world and often are irreplaceable objects of study for scholars who add to our knowledge of ourselves and our environment. The defendant in this case stole hundreds of rare manuscripts and documents from the Library of Columbia University. Spiegelman stole, among other things, these are listed in the federal criminal case. This guy Spiegelman stole 17 medieval and Renaissance manuscripts dating from 1160 to 1550 AD. 8 Arabic and Persian manuscripts dating from around 900 to 1887. 26 medieval, Renaissance, and early modern documents dating from 1122 to 1789. Spiegelman stole another 284 historical maps that dated from 1628 to 1891. Spiegelman stole 26 presidential letters and documents dating from 1791 to 1918, including 6 George Washington letters. 4 of them were written to John Jay, 8 letters from John Adams to William Tudor, and 12 letters from other presidents, including John Quincy Adams, Andrew Jackson, Abraham Lincoln, and Woodrow Wilson. 133 letters and documents from and relating to Thomas Edison dating from 1860 to 1903, including contracts, patent assignments, and correspondence concerning the development of the telegraph and the expansion of the telegraph network. Many of these items have not been recovered. This is merely a single thief and the text stolen from a single university. And it was published in a federal criminal case in 1998, only because this Spiegelman guy got caught. I'm bringing this to your attention because it's time that we consider that there are probably a whole network of these Spiegelmans out there who have already stolen priceless historical texts and maps and have either not been caught or not been reported and are probably not finished destroying these evidences of our history. The archaic's position is that this is not an anomaly. It is the norm. The only unusual aspect is that a Spiegelman actually got caught and tried in a criminal proceeding.